G'day humans, Chris Stead here. Got a review for you. It's another laptop. This time the Asus VivoBook S15. Let's dive in. So anyone who's been looking in the laptop space for any amount of time will have come across Asus. They're one of the biggest manufacturers of laptops in the world, readily available anywhere you look, particularly here in Australia. But this is a little bit different. Now this is part of the new wave of laptops we're seeing emerge kind of post-mid 2024 that are that first generation of CoPilot Plus enabled AI-driven laptops. But it's not just about CoPilot Plus either. What we're seeing with these laptops is experimentation with new chips and a new operating system really. So this has the Snapdragon, the Qualcomm Snapdragon chip in it. You can get the X Plus model or the X Elite model. And it uses Windows ARM as an operating system. Now Windows ARM has been around for a while, but it's been maligned for a while too. And it's only recently that we're starting to see, with the help of the AI, with the help of these new chips, Windows ARM start to really find its place in the market. Now, one of the big bonuses of combining Windows ARM, the Snapdragon X Elite or X Plus chip, and this kind of new AI ecosystem is that you manage to get great performance without sacrificing battery life. And certainly, if you're regular to my channel, you'll have seen I've reviewed quite a couple of laptops lately in this space, and they do deliver on that. They do deliver performance and they do deliver battery life as well. So, what about the VivoBook S15 from Asus? Will it achieve that goal as well? Let's dive in with my review. And as always, I like to start with the price. Now, as I mentioned, there's two variants of this. They've got the X Plus chip and the X Elite chip. Now, they're the two variants that you can get in the Qualcomm Snapdragon CPU chipset, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, as I'll go into in a sec. So, the X Plus here in Australia retails for $2,099 Australian dollars, that is, of course, whereas the X Elite chip variant retails for $2,699, so an extra $600 for that chip jump. And that's more extreme than we might see if you're jumping up from different Intel processors up a notch. There's a fair bit of a bigger gap there in terms of price, but there's also a bigger gap in terms of performance. Now, if you dive right into the Snapdragon chipset list, yes, there's the Elite variant, yes, there's a Plus variant, but there's also multiple variants within that. And they all have kind of different numbers of cores and different amounts of power, basically. Now, the X Plus chip that comes with the VivoBook S15 is the base model. It's the lowest spec of all the X Plus chips. Now, the X Elite chip, which is in this particular one, the review unit I've got here is an X Elite model, is the base or the bottom variant of the X Elite chips as well, but the gap is quite significant. We're talking about, well, according to my maths, about 2.23 times more power in the X Elite over the X Plus, so significant. On top of that, it also jumps from 16 gigabytes of RAM in the X Plus to 32 gigabytes of RAM in the X Elite. So you're getting more than double the power and more than double the RAM for that $600. And considering that that this isn't a powerhouse machine to begin with, it's not armed with massive graphics cards and 64 gigabytes of RAM and all this kind of full high-end stuff, I think moving up from that X Plus to that X Elite is definitely what you would be wanting to consider with the VivoBook S15, especially in the modern day with the way that some of the software and Chrome, let's be honest, can chug. Now, here's some interesting news. I was doing a little bit of search around and I found reputable retailers, like big retailers, had the X Elite variant priced at the X Plus price, so $2,099. Now, when I went into that deeper, the places that were advertising that didn't have it in stock. Now, I don't know if that means there was recently a sale and it sold out, or whether it was just a bit of like gallivanting around tomfoolery, consumer trickery to get you onto the site. But if you can score the X Elite at the X Plus price, you're onto a genuine winner there. So keep an eye out for that. Now, what are you getting for the money? So let's head up and have a look at the specifications. And I'm going to focus on the specifications for this model, the one I have, which is the Snapdragon X Elite variant with the 32 gigabytes of RAM. So you're getting that Snapdragon X Elite chip with the 3.4 gigahertz variant, and that's 12 cores. You've got the Qualcomm AI engine with up to 75 total tops included. You've got the Qualcomm Hexagon NPU, so that's the neural processing unit, so more AI stuff, which is 45 tops. Now you've got an integrated Qualcomm Adreno GPU, so it's integrated graphics, you don't have a dedicated graphics card, and I'll go into the impact of that shortly. As mentioned, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM in this variant. You've also got a 1 terabyte NVMe M2 PCIe SSD in here, so that's kind of what you want from a modern day hard drive. Now the display, quite a beautiful display, is a Asus Lumina 15.6 inch 3K, so that's 2880 by 1620 pixels OLED display. Now it's a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, so not the 16 by 10 we've been seeing more common nowadays, and it's not a touchscreen. However, being that it's OLED, you do get a 0.2 millisecond response time, which is fantastic, 120 Hz refresh rate, which is great, 600 nits peak brightness, which doesn't blow me away, but it's not bad. At 100% DCI P3 color gamut, 1:1 contrast ratio, and it's HDR 600 ready. So yeah, quite a good display, a decent display for the money. Now you've got Harman Kardon speakers, which offer Dolby Atmos support. There's an HD camera with a privacy shutter. On the connection front, Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4. So really kind of, at the high end of what we'd expect in 2024. I don't understand why you'd be going lower than that nowadays, but many are. But that's good, that's kind of future-proof you a little bit. Now there's a 70 watt-hour battery, which has an advertised battery life of 18 hours. I'll go into that shortly on the battery life performance, but 18 hours is what they're saying. Now it's 14.7 millimeters thick, 1.42 kilograms in weight. It's got aluminium casing, and the color here is called Cool Silver. So let's have a look at the design of the Asus VivoBook S15. And look, it's pretty simple, and we've got to take into account the audience here. So obviously it's a productivity laptop. It's about function over form. And yeah, look, it's pretty bland. There's not a whole lot going on here. I'd call a bureaucratic silver. And yeah, I mean, I kind of like the way it tapers. It's got a bit of a kind of clamshell look to it there. I really like this interesting little detail at the back here with the way that the hinge works. Create this little groove. It's not completely without character, but there's not a whole lot going on. On the inside, there's quite a big bezel around the outside. Unfortunately, the screen's not coming on. But yeah, there's a bit of a bezel that you do notice. And I've actually been surprised by how much I've been affected by the 16 by 9 ratio, which obviously used to be commonplace, but now so many of the things I've reviewed lately have been 16:10. I've actually found that kind of screen real estate a little bit compromising, which I was quite surprised by. But there's nothing harmful here in those negatives. It's fine. And it's a pretty strong hinge. In fact, when we look at kind of the positives of the design, the hinge system is definitely something that I like. It's kind of got this, you can probably see there, it's just inbuilt into the chassis slightly, and it creates quite a stiff bit of resistance, which is what you want, because otherwise you get on a bumpy bus or something and it's like vibrating like crazy, or it falls down on you like this. Elements like that, that's not going to happen here. It's quite a strong hinge. On the back, nice, big, long, stiff rubber feet as well. It just provides a little bit of support, a little bit of angle when you're typing. You can see that there. On the keyboard front, we've got a full size keyboard, so you've got the numbers down the side as well, so it's making the most of that real estate that it's got. Touchpad is positioned underneath the spacer, which is what I like. You'll find you want to try and avoid laptops where they center the touchpad over here, because you want to sit like this and you end up putting your hand on the touchpads. Here, the touchpad is centered to the spacebar, more or less, which means you can sit here without having your hand on the touchpad, type away. Quiet keys, so that's not really making a whole lot of noise as well, which is good, and it's all backlit as well. Now, it's a large touchpad as well, as you can see here. And interestingly, I think the weight, it's 1.42 kilograms, which is actually, not necessarily light. Like I remember reviewing the LG Gram, it's under a kilo, but it doesn't really feel that weight. It actually feels quite light. It's like it's a well spaced out weight over a large area, and for the size laptop that it is, I actually think it's quite portable and doesn't feel too bad. Definitely one of the shining lights of the design though is the ports. And when we talk about something that's a productivity-based device, this is what I'm referring to. It's just having that kind of, that functionality. So here you've got two USB-A 3.2 ports. Now they're on the right-hand side. So that's on the right-hand person's mouse, if you were having a mouse and not using a trackpad, but they're the USB-A. So they're probably the ones you're gonna least likely use for, say, an external hard drive nowadays. On this side, however, we're packed with ports. We've got HDMI, and not just any HDMI, it's 2.1, so it's next gen capable. We've got two USB-C 4 ports, so Thunderbolt ports, so they can display, they can charge. We've got a micro SD card holder or slot, and we've got the audio jack, the 3.5mm audio jack. So, we're seeing increasingly now laptops ditching a lot of these ports. I've reviewed laptops recently and they just have, say, 3 USB-Cs and that's it. And maybe that's all you need nowadays, but if you're buying a laptop for productivity, having access to all of these options still in the device, I think, is a really good perk. Now, when it comes to performance, there's plenty to like. This actually delivers a really, really strong productivity experience. Your day-to-day experience that you're going to be having, kind of on browsers, doing emails, mucking around in basic software, it runs really zippy, really fast, not too much to worry about at all. I did notice sometimes it can take a little bit of time, like a little bit longer than I would have expected just to load in to some of the software, but once you're in there, things seem to perform pretty admirably indeed. I've tried some higher end software, stuff like DaVinci Resolve, and it also behaves quite well as well. So that is, lots of positives there to talk about, as long as it's a native ARM app. And this is where the Windows ARM stuff becomes quite interesting, because utilizing this more efficient operating system obviously is doing a lot for the battery life. It seems to be communicating and working quite well with all the AI stuff that's going on and allowing for that performance and so forth. But being that it's been a maligned operating system for an extended period of time, not everyone has basically updated their apps and experiences to work natively on the ARM operating system. Now that is increasing and is improving, because we are starting to see laptops come into the space that are consumer friendly and have volume of purchase behind them. And then as soon as you've got volume of purchase, obviously the manufacturers of the software are going to be more inclined to put resources towards making it available for Windows ARM. So it definitely seeing more coming. I think it's going to be quite an onslaught or improvement in that space over the next year or so into 2025. However, right now you will come across software that you may want to use that may not natively work on ARM. And as soon as it's not natively working on ARM, as soon as it's not an ARM variant of that app, you do start to see some struggles, a little bit of just slowdown, complications. It just doesn't work as seamlessly. But once you've got that ARM variant, the performance, battery life, everything kind of comes together and works a lot better. So that's something to keep in mind. Now that extends to the gaming experience. I did try a bunch of games on here and it was hit and miss, which is what I expected. It's like what I'm seeing with the Snapdragon chip for the most part is it's great outside of gaming, but it's not so good in gaming, especially when you've got the integrated graphics card. There are laptops I've seen it do all right. The Microsoft Surface did actually pretty well for gaming, I thought. The variant that has this kind of new model age architecture, but here, not really the case. So, for example, some games I tried to open, Call of Duty 6, Dirt 5, not Call of Duty 6, it's Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Dirt 5 just flat out refused to open. Like, Call of Duty didn't even try. Dirt 5 tried to open, but just sat there on the loading screen and never ever got there. I got Control to open, but it opened in a very, very small window. And but then when I started stepping back a generation of games or looking at more indie flavored stuff, I started to get some results. For example, Stray, fantastic game, good looking game. I was able to play that more or less fine. When I bumped it up to 3K resolution, it was a bit chuggy. It wasn't great. When I bumped it down to HD resolution, it was more than playable, fine, looked beautiful, fantastic game if you haven't played it. So that's kind of what you've got to think about with the gaming experience on here. And I will say, I don't think you have to worry about it too much, because if you've got a decent internet connection, depending on where you are in the world, but if your internet's even half good nowadays, the cloud gaming works fine. And I've been using xCloud, for example, to play high-end games over the cloud on this recent run of kind of Snapdragon-enabled laptops that I've been getting into test, and they play great. So I think it's becoming less and less vital for users to go to the expense and the complications of adding full hardcore dedicated graphics cards into these devices in terms of like the weight that it does, the battery drain, that kind of thing, for the purposes of gaming. For other things like video rendering, so forth, yeah, sure. But for the purposes of gaming, I think you can get away with the cloud in so many instances nowadays. That's probably worth considering. So I don't think it's a major down point for this particular device, especially since it's a productivity focused device. Now, let's talk about the battery life. So as I mentioned at the top, advertised battery life is 18 hours. I was seeing more around 12 to 13. That's kind of where I saw it land. If you really pump it, it can go under 10, but you've really got to be extreme. And yeah, if you're really, really, really not using it much at all, maybe start creeping up to that 16 or 17. But really, the point is, you're getting a long time out of this, easily getting a day, easily getting a long overseas flight. So that's what you want from a productivity-based laptop. Have some of the other Snapdragon laptops I've seen done better, sure, but still, this is miles beyond the 5, 4, 6 hours that we were seeing with laptops not that long ago. So huge ground has been made there. Now with the keyboard experience, which you can see here, I found the typing on it really quite lovely. It's a really lovely keyboard to type on. It's not very loud, and I mentioned this before, but I think that's really important. I've used some laptops before, and it honestly sounds like, you know, there's a fight going on. But this is actually quite quiet. The travel distance I think is 1.7 millimeters. It feels good. It's got a lovely feel concave to it. Really lovely typing experience. Really, really responsive. It's not a touch screen as I mentioned, so all your action's going to be on the keyboard and with the trackpad. And overall, I'm really happy with it. The backlighting is a bit basic, but overall, pretty happy with the typing experience. The touchpad, not so in tune with. It's a little bit, your thumb doesn't quite slide over it really nicely. Maybe if I want to wear it down a bit, maybe it'll get a little bit better. But more importantly, there's quite a few times I went to click and either didn't respond. I had to click a couple of times to get it to work. So it's just a little bit sluggish. It's okay, it's fine. It's just not near the top touchpad experiences that I've had. You do, however, have a USB-A port over here. So adding a mouse either through that or through Bluetooth is always an option for you. But yeah, touchpad potentially could have been a little bit better. On a speaker front, you've got the Harman Kardon speakers in here. They're downward firing, so the volume's definitely not an issue. They're loud, but they kind of muffle a little bit. So whether that's into your lap, into the table, or just it's not the greatest speaker experience, but it's more than serviceable. And because the screen's so beautiful, beautiful OLED screen, the entertainment experience, it's fine. You're going to watch movies on this, something like that, you're fine. And let's be honest, how many of us these days really aren't within arm's reach of earbuds or headphones if you really want to improve that audio experience for any particular reason? Now, one of the other things that we're seeing a lot with the Snapdragon CPUs, the AI stuff, and even with Windows ARM, is significant improvement in heat and sound as well. So that's something else I want to highlight about this particular laptop, the VivoBook S15, is that it very rarely heats up. Even under extreme load around the vents here, yeah, sure, you can feel a bit of heat, but it's not enough to really be discomforting on the lap. And sound-wise, you know, sometimes they used to sound like a jet plane taking off. But the audio experience here is, like, you know, the sound that the actual machine makes is whisper quiet. I don't even think I've really even heard it fire up. So that's great as well, especially if you're looking at this for a work laptop or as a student laptop, something like that, where you're going to be in a space with other people. The fact that the typing is quiet and the fact that the system itself is quiet is better for everyone around you. But it's also just nice. It's just like, that's what you want, right? As for the Microsoft Copilot Plus stuff, look, this is not a VivoBook S15 specific thing, but just in general, it's look, it's early days. It's first gen kind of the service. Yeah, it's kind of cool to muck around in, but it's not really offering a whole lot. Definitely not the type of thing you would upgrade a laptop for at the moment. Ultimately, I think that the Asus VivoBook S15 is a winner. It's a winner of a laptop because the things that really matter, performance, battery life, typing experience, display, they all hit the mark. They all do a really good job. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's a bit of a bland design. The 16:9 aspect ratio has actually impacted me more than I thought it would. I'm sure I'll adjust back to it, having spent so much time with 16:10, but potentially that's something that's going to put people off. I think it's pretty portable as well. I think that's worth mentioning. Despite being such a relatively large laptop and 1.4 kilos, I find it really it just feels light in the hand. It's the aluminium casing, I'm guessing, and just the improvements in space and requirements that AI and also the Snapdragon CPU bring. So I find it quite a portable device as well. And yeah, the design could be a bit nicer. It could perform a little bit better with games, things like that. But I think for the money that you're paying for this, if you're in it for the right reasons, you're in it for productivity, you're in it as a work machine, as a student machine, if you have done the research and are aware of the fact that the software and the apps that you most want to use are either already ARM enabled or have a very clear roadmap to when they will be. That's something you definitely want to check off before you dive into a laptop like this. I think for the vast majority of people, that'll be fine. It's just going to be some obscure, higher end software where you might start to find some struggles there. But if you're in that space, I think you're doing all right, especially if you can find on one of those crazy sale prices where it really comes back down close to that 2,000 mark, because that's a good deal for sure. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Asus VivoBook S15. Many thanks for watching. Make sure you check out my channel because I've got a heap of other laptop reviews up there and all kinds of stuff. I'm always at the events and the announcements for these things as well, so I will share any new news I get on new product from the Asus range as soon as I hear it. Otherwise, I'm Chris Stead. Cheers for watching. Until next time, I'll check you later.